I mean, I gave no excuses because, it was tough. And when we came on back to us, we probably didn't do it. But it was what it is, and I was being able to bounce back into that time. You have to look at it as positive, right? If we're coming off the ball, it's a good opportunity for us to go and finish this focus on win. That's how I feel it. And everybody's part of everybody's story because, figure out a way to make us feel better and see that and go play.
Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever were battling for every possession against the New York Liberty. But the final minutes took an unexpected turn when Clark suddenly disappeared from the action. Then came her response, and it only raised more questions than answers. What really happened on the bench? Why was she absent when the game mattered most? And what did Caitlin finally reveal?
Are set to take on the New York Liberty. Now, we are in the midst of sabotage. We are in the midst of a lot of nonsense going on with this team. A bonehead bozo clown put on her red nose of a coach in Stephanie White. She's having spaz attacks and losing her mind every time Caitlin Clark shoots the ball.
The easiest thing Caitlin Clark could have done after the Indiana Fever's loss to the New York Liberty would have been to place the blame somewhere else, especially with plenty of reasons and people she could have pointed to.
If you're a fan of the Indiana Fever against the New York Liberty, but as I always say, and I start so many of these videos out, being an Indiana Fever fan is not for the faint of heart. I actually can't even remember the last time they took their starters out early. The Indiana Fever seem to always be in that crunch time, just like grinding it out for a win. And they almost had it after being down by 10 at the free throw line, of which the Indiana Fever shot an abysmal 50%.
She could have blamed the demanding schedule, constant travel, physical defense, missed calls, or even those 2 free throws that quickly became the internet's biggest talking point. Instead, Clark redirected the focus toward herself, and that response reveals far more about her mindset than any single difficult game ever could.
Full first half, ISOing all day, no teamwork, slow basketball, the ball not moving around. I mean, it's ridiculous work what we're doing out here. Then we get to the closing side of the game. AB going up with a contested shot. I mean, I don't know what she was throwing up at the end. Caitlin Clark throwing up a contested shot. I don't know what she had going on with this ISO stuff. Why are we ISOing when we just saw evidence that if we run the pick and roll, we can get a good look. We can get a good look, right? The entire first half was nasty work. ISO this, ISO that. I mean, my eyes felt like somebody dropped lemon drops in.
But why does every mistake she makes seem to become a judgment on her entire career? And how much pressure can one player realistically handle before people finally acknowledge that she is being asked to carry an extraordinary amount?
This is exactly how I feel. Another game. Now, I made a video talking about Breanna Stewart, telling the world what Dallas did to stop the Fever. They gave y'all the game plan they was going to do to stop y'all publicly. And yet again, she run the offense through Kelsey Mitchell.
By the time Indiana arrived for this matchup with New York, the Fever were already dealing with a schedule that could make even the most experienced traveler wonder if the league had accidentally turned a basketball itinerary into a punishment plan. Indiana had spent long stretches of the season crossing states, playing on the road, and moving from one demanding matchup to another, while trying to maintain consistency in a league where the margin for error is already incredibly small. And somehow, through all that travel and pressure, Caitlin Clark is still expected to perform like a machine. She is expected to score, create opportunities, run the offense, make the right reads, limit turnovers, defend, absorb contact, stay healthy, deliver in crucial moments, and apparently never miss a free throw because the instant she does, social media reacts like someone pulled a fire alarm. That is the strange reality surrounding Clark right now. The expectations are massive because her impact has been massive, but those expectations have created an unusual standard where one ordinary bad night can suddenly become evidence that she is overrated, selfish, inconsistent, or somehow responsible for every problem Indiana faces. One missed shot can become a headline when your name is Caitlin Clark, and suddenly one moment is treated as though it explains an entire basketball game. One turnover becomes a debate about her decision-making. One difficult possession becomes proof that something is supposedly wrong, and 2 missed free throws can trigger a full social media investigation before the players have even left the arena. That is the reality Clark continues to navigate, because the standards surrounding her have become so extreme that an ordinary off night can feel like a national referendum on her ability. So, what is really going on?
Stephanie White, but she's lost her damn mind. You got a big man in Aaliyah Boston who refuses to pass the ball to the best player in the league in Caitlin Clark. She refuses to do a dribble handoff. She never hands it off. She always wants to fake it and then go one-on-one. You also have a big in Aaliyah Boston who doesn't set real screens. I mean, it's a bunch of sabotage going on. Let's be clear here. The Indiana Fever are an absolute joke right now, mainly because the coach and the big man, and this ain't even a Kelsey thing. Like, at the end of the day, we know Kelsey's just going to shoot. She's just going to score. Caitlin and Kelsey have been fine as a backcourt. They've been the ones carrying this team for the most part. It's almost like Aaliyah Boston started to feel left out.
The loss to the New York Liberty was another clear example of that pressure. Indiana was going up against one of the league's strongest teams. The game remained competitive, and every possession became more important as the clock moved toward the closing minutes. Clark had moments she would probably like to have back, including the 2 free throws that became one of the biggest talking points afterward, but the most revealing part of the story was not simply that she missed them. It was how she handled the disappointment. Rather than pretending the mistakes never happened, Clark accepted responsibility and focused on what she could improve. That may sound straightforward, but in the environment surrounding her right now, it reveals a lot about her mentality. She understands that being a competitor does not mean making every shot or making the perfect decision on every possession. It means being willing to honestly evaluate those mistakes and use them as motivation instead of letting them become a lasting source of frustration. That mindset matters because Clark is playing under a level of scrutiny that very few athletes experience this early in their careers. When she knocks down a difficult three-pointer, the reaction can be enormous. But when she misses that same type of shot a few nights later, some people immediately question whether she should have taken it. When she delivers an incredible pass through traffic, she gets praise for her vision. But when that same kind of pass turns into a turnover, critics can suddenly act as though the creativity itself was the problem.
Ending of this game, they were going band for band, trading buckets, but the defense on both ends was just so bad. Everyone was getting blown by. People on the Liberty were getting blown by. People on the Indiana Fever were getting blown by the Liberty. So I can't say that this was one of those like can't miss first beginnings of the game, though it did end up getting that way in the fourth quarter. The Liberty started coming away with a 10-point lead against the Indiana Fever. Did not know if the Fever could pick it back up, but they went on a run. It was a 3-point game.
That is an incredibly difficult balance for any player. Clark has to stay aggressive enough to make the plays that have made her such a dangerous offensive weapon, while also accepting that those same risks will sometimes lead to mistakes. A high-level playmaker cannot eliminate every turnover without also removing some of the ambition that creates difficult assists. A confident shooter cannot guarantee that every attempt will go in, and a player who wants the ball during crucial moments cannot expect every decision made under pressure to be the perfect one. That is simply the reality of professional basketball. The physical side of the game makes that challenge even harder. Clark has had to adjust to defenders who know that giving her comfortable space is not an option, meaning she regularly faces intense pressure, physical contests, contact around screens, and defenders determined to make every possession uncomfortable. Some of that physicality is simply part of competitive basketball, while other moments become controversial when fans believe officials should have made a different call. Either way, the reality remains that Clark is rarely given the freedom to operate without pressure. She has to create against aggressive defense while knowing thousands of people are watching every possession, and every decision becomes magnified because of the attention surrounding her. When she makes the difficult pass, people celebrate her vision. When that same type of pass goes wrong, people question the judgment behind it. When she attacks the basket, defenders collapse around her. And when she draws contact, another debate can immediately begin over whether the whistle should have been blown.
That game, it was hurting me, fam. Oh my goodness. Then we get to the second half, we get to the third quarter, right? Late in the third, we start to figure out, if we run the pick and roll, we can not only get Caitlin a mid-range shot, not only get somebody a lay at the rim, we can also not take the shot and find an Aaliyah Boston in the corner. We can find a Sophie in the corner if we just take our time and focus and move the ball around, not panic. Then all of a sudden we figure that out. Oh my goodness, look how it works. Look how it works. Then Aaliyah Boston gets the ball in the corner, doesn't rush the shot, gets downhill on the baseline, and guess who we find? Sophie Cunningham in the corner.
That is a tremendous amount for one player to process while still trying to read a defense in real time. The pressure does not disappear once the game begins. If anything, it becomes even louder. Indiana has become one of the most closely watched teams in women's basketball, and Clark is clearly at the center of that attention. The Fever are no longer simply another team appearing on a regular schedule. Their games have become major events, and the level of interest surrounding the franchise has changed dramatically. That attention can be valuable, but it also comes with a price. Every opponent wants to beat Indiana, and every defender understands that slowing down Clark can completely change the rhythm of the Fever's offense. Fans expect memorable performances, critics wait for mistakes, supporters expect highlights, and social media seems constantly ready to turn the next big moment into another debate. Clark has to perform while surrounded by all of that noise. At the same time, Indiana has been dealing with a demanding schedule that requires the team to travel across different states, adjust to new environments, prepare for new opponents, and recover quickly before doing it all over again. When a team moves from one road assignment to another, the physical demands do not disappear simply because another game has been placed on the calendar. That context does not excuse every mistake, and it should not. Clark does not appear to want excuses anyway. That is one of the most interesting aspects of her reaction. She is not claiming that she should never be criticized, and she is not acting as though every mistake needs to be explained away.
The Indiana Fever, the problem in tonight's game, going up against the New York Liberty, okay, the lead changed like 6 times. Okay, let me see. Yeah, the lead changed 6 times, and they were tied 7 times in tonight's game. The biggest issue that the Indiana Fever ran into when going up against the New York Liberty in tonight's game was the free throws. They missed so many free throw shots at crunch time, guys. And I don't want to just drag Caitlin Clark, okay? Because again,
Instead, she appears to approach difficult performances with the mindset that there is always something she can improve. That is the mentality of a true competitor. A player who only wants praise will search for reasons why a mistake was someone else's fault. A player who genuinely wants to improve will eventually ask what they could have done differently, even when other factors clearly played a role in the outcome. Clark has shown that willingness to look inward, and that quality could become even more important as her career continues. She knows she will miss shots. She knows she will turn the ball over. She knows there will be possessions where she makes the wrong read. She knows defenders will sometimes win the battle. But she also understands that none of those moments can be allowed to determine what happens on the next possession. That is what makes the missed free throws more interesting than the criticism surrounding them. Of course, those shots mattered. Free throws during the closing stages of a close game are important, and if Clark had made both attempts, the situation could have looked very different. There is no reason to pretend otherwise simply because she is a superstar, but recognizing the importance of those attempts is not the same as claiming they define her. A basketball game contains countless possessions, decisions, defensive rotations, missed opportunities, successful plays, and moments that never become viral clips. Reducing an entire performance to 2 free throws ignores everything that happened before those attempts.
Be here. The story of the 2026 Indiana Fever, they're not winning the championship, guys. I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't believe they're winning the championship. They're lucky if they get into the playoffs. I believe that they're going to be knocked out in the first round. This has nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. Nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. If I'm Caitlin Clark, I'm talking to my agent right now. We're negotiating, and we're getting me the hell out of Indiana, bro. I don't even think getting a new coach could fix this. Granted, Stephanie White get a lot of the blame, but majority of the blame needs to be spearheaded and gone to none other than Amber Cox.
It also overlooks the enormous impact Clark has already had on Indiana. She has helped change the way defenses approach the Fever, created opportunities for her teammates, added another level of perimeter playmaking, stretched opposing defenses with her shooting range, and become a major part of the franchise's identity. The attention surrounding Indiana has changed significantly as well. The same people who recognize how much attention Clark brings to the Fever can sometimes turn around and expect her to personally fix every problem the team faces. When Indiana wins, the conversation can quickly become about Clark's brilliance. And when Indiana loses, the focus can shift toward Clark's mistakes. But basketball simply does not work that way. The difference between a good player and a great competitor is not necessarily how many mistakes they make. Often it is what they do after making them. That is why Clark's response matters. She is not treating the loss as proof that she cannot perform under pressure. Instead, she appears to be viewing it as another opportunity to identify areas where she can improve. That approach is especially important because she is still developing as a professional player. She has already accomplished a tremendous amount, but there is still a long career ahead of her. She is learning how opponents will defend her, how to manage the physical demands of the WNBA schedule, how to handle different defensive schemes, and how to balance the expectations surrounding her with the reality of being one player on a team. Nobody should expect that development process to be flawless.
I know I said the wins and losses weren't that important in the middle of this stretch for the Fever, considering the schedule. As I put it, it's diabolical. But there's some frustration points from it. The most important thing was them getting out healthy. That wasn't exactly the case. Maisha Hines-Allen looked to be holding her arm, looked to be in a lot of pain. There was no update after the game about her status, but there were some pain points from the way the Fever have played, really going back to some of that tempo game, but obviously in Dallas and then in this one as well. Some of that can be chalked up to fatigue. Some of that is some patterns that we've seen. The last 43 seconds or so will be pointed out a lot because Caitlin Clark was involved, who I thought played pretty well overall in this game, but she's looking for a foul on Phoebe.
The criticism, however, often fails to recognize the difference between a player having a bad moment and being a bad player. Those are two completely different things. Clark can have a poor shooting night without suddenly losing her ability to shoot. She can miss 2 free throws without suddenly forgetting how to make them. She can make one questionable decision without suddenly becoming an ineffective playmaker. It sounds obvious, yet social media has an incredible ability to turn one moment into a judgment about an entire player's character and ability. That is where the backlash surrounding these missed attempts can become excessive. For those celebrating the misses as though Clark has somehow been exposed, there is an inconvenient reality. Difficult moments are part of development when a player refuses to let them define who they are. Clark has already experienced both sides of that equation. She has had performances where everything seemed to go right, followed by nights where every mistake was magnified. She has experienced extraordinary praise and equally intense criticism, sometimes within the same week. That kind of emotional swing can be difficult for anyone to handle. The danger is allowing outside opinions to become more important than internal standards. If Clark starts playing simply to avoid criticism, she could lose the aggressiveness that makes her effective. If she becomes afraid to attempt difficult passes because people will criticize turnovers, she becomes less dangerous. If she stops taking shots because every miss brings criticism, then the defense has already won.
Point. She only had 2 turnovers. And I say only, okay, because it could be, we already know she can be somewhat of a Tammy turnover, a turnover Tammy, so to speak, if you will, rather. And in tonight's game, I believe 2 turnovers, that's fair, okay? She still managed to put up 21 points, okay, and she also had 4 rebounds. But she was 1 of 4 from the free throw line. She was 9 of 18 from the field, as well as 2 of 6 from the three-point line. She was 25% from the three-point line, from shooting, from the 3. Okay, but again, they had Aaliyah Boston to pick it up. Kelsey Mitchell was a one-woman army all on her own, like she usually is.
The better approach is exactly what she appears to be doing. Accept the mistake, learn from it, and keep competing. That is why the story should not end with 2 missed free throws. Those attempts are part of the story, but they are nowhere near the entire story. The bigger picture is about a player carrying enormous expectations while navigating an increasingly demanding schedule, dealing with physical pressure from opponents, facing intense scrutiny, and still choosing to hold herself accountable when things do not go according to plan. That is what makes her response significant. She could have taken the easy route and blamed everything around her. Instead, she focused on improvement, and that mindset could become one of her biggest advantages as the season continues, because the people criticizing her are not going anywhere. Defenders will continue to pressure her. The schedule will continue to test Indiana. The travel will continue. The expectations will continue. Cameras will keep following every mistake, and social media will continue acting as though every missed shot deserves a congressional hearing. But Clark will continue to have opportunities to answer all of it where it matters most. On the court, the Fever are not defined by one loss in New York, and Clark certainly is not defined by 2 missed free throws. Indiana has already reached a position that reflects how much the team has developed, and Clark has played a significant role in getting them there. That contribution does not disappear because one night ended badly. Her impact does not disappear because a shot missed. Her competitiveness does not disappear because she made a mistake. And her future does not become less promising simply because one game did not go according to plan.
Goes to the ground here, looks for a foul call, doesn't get it. Then back on the other side, there is the foul that is called on Caitlin. Or I think Caitlin got the foul call there. Sends the Liberty to the free throw line. And then, this is the replay, by the way. And you can see, it's probably a foul. The arm is in there. Probably should have gotten the call. But sometimes you don't get those calls at the end of the game. The problem is, it feels like Caitlin Clark never gets those calls. So you see where the frustration comes from a little bit right there. Caitlin goes to the free throw line and misses 2 foul shots. She has not shot free throws.
In fact, difficult moments can become some of the most valuable experiences for an elite competitor because they reveal the areas that still need improvement. Clark does not need everyone around her to pretend she is perfect. And when Caitlin Clark steps back onto the court, those 2 missed free throws will remain part of the record from what happened against New York, but they will not determine what happens next. That is the part her critics may be forgetting. Caitlin Clark will miss shots again. She will make mistakes again. She will have another difficult night at some point. But she will also have another opportunity to respond, and if her reaction to this loss is any indication, she will not run away from that opportunity. She will look for it, because the real test of a competitor is not whether they can avoid failure when everything is going well. The real test is whether they can take a disappointing moment, learn from it, and return with enough confidence to demand the ball again. That is exactly what Indiana needs from Caitlin Clark. And for everyone celebrating those 2 missed free throws as though they have already written the final chapter, there is one major problem with that assumption. The story is nowhere near finished.